Welcome to the Putting You Back Together Again show 2.0. Yes, we've rebooted. I'm Rochelle Booker. As you know, I'm AKA Coach Ro. We paused the show for about a month and now we're back in stride again. We moved to a new studio, which is innovative and cutting edge, enabling my show to go to the next level. I am super excited about this reality. Today we're talking about, is there a hostile takeover of the U.S. government? I don't know if you noticed, but there has been quite a bit of chaos, confusion, and craziness going on in Washington, D.C., which could potentially lead to a national or even global crisis. We've seen countless executive orders being handed out, and thousands of federal employees get laid off in efforts to cut government spending that the Trump administration deems as wasteful. We're going to examine this roller coaster ride that this nation has been on since the inauguration in January, because it's like being on a ride that's spinning out of control, and the American people have no seatbelts to strap us in. And so we're just being tossed around and upside down. Why? Because the administration has no guardrails. It makes me want to sing Diana Ross's song, Upside Down. You know what I mean. I have two special guests on the panel today who are going to help us to make sense of all this craziness. My first guest is Ruben Eckels. And you know, Ruben is no stranger to our show. Ruben is a former pastor of New Day Christian Church and deputy director of Sunflower Community Action. Ordained in the African Methodist Episcopal Church in 1993, Reverend Eckels served as the pastor of Allen Chapel AME in Salina, Kansas, until he was called to start a new work where in Wichita, Kansas, where he served for over 17 years. And he also is a former interfaith advocacy minister for Church World Service and is now transitioning into his new role within CWS as the Faith and Partnership Coordinator. So welcome to the show, Reverend Eckels. Welcome back. He also, I wanted to add, received his Master of Divinity degree from Payne Theological Seminary in Wilberforce, Ohio, where he received numerous honors. So you have such an impressive resume. I'd be here all night if I read the whole resume. So welcome back, Ruben. And my second guest, who's going to be joining us, Jamar, also known as Jay. Jam Master Jay. He is the CEO of Studios, and he is going to also be joining us on this segment to discuss this very important issue on U.S. politics. And Mr. Jamar also has a very impressive resume, frontline staff management, C-suite management training, KPI and CSI plan implementation, video production and content creation studio owner. Also a marketing and management specialist and consultant, entrepreneur and business investment expertise. He is also a social and political activist and a superb content producer. So welcome to the show, Mr. J. Well, thank you for joining us, guys. So we are going to have a very, very impactful show, very powerful show this evening. And so, Ruben, I'm going to start with you. We've seen a whirlwind of executive orders being made, federal agencies being dismantled through elimination of funding and people. And Elon Musk and his Doge folks are leading the charge. So my question is, are most of these changes part of the Project 2025 agenda that supposedly was a conspiracy theory pushed by the Democrats and Trump said he knew nothing about? But I want us to look at, how we can rise up and stand against this, the injustices that are going on in the country. So let's just talk about, Ruben, all these things that are going on. We just see an influx of all these orders being executed. And, Trump's administration, even during his campaign, said he knew nothing about Project 2025, but in fact, he really did, right? So tell us, what is your take on, the changes that are being implemented? Is it really aligned with 2025? And let's just have some real talk and talk about what's really going on, what the hidden agenda has been all along.
Good evening. It's good to be with you here tonight. Um, to answer your question, the 20, Project 2025 is basically a new spin, a new name on old programs that have always been out to attack African Americans as we progress politically. We've seen what Reverend Barber called the third reconstruction, and that is after every time we have made gains in this country and put more and more African Americans into power in power positions, from the mayors to governor, the first governor in Virginia, to the mayor of Chicago. You would see an attack um, those on those gains. And so Richard Nixon did it in 1974 and tried to impound cities and their budgets. And so there was actually a law that was put in place to try to counteract his lawlessness. And so now we see President Trump trying to do the exact same thing and basically impound budgets all across the whole nation. And that is because as more and more black people and and people of color move into positions as mayors, um, senators, House of Representatives, we begin to get more power. And the only way to offset that power is to begin to move the power from first the mayors, then to the governor, and now to the executive branch. And so, as he's pulling for more power in the executive branch so that he can basically control everything, and he was able to do it by packing the Supreme Court. He's packed the Supreme Court, who actually justified that he can be lawless, and that he would be justified in doing anything that he wants to do. And so this is basically an attack on the African American community. You see that they have pulled out um, of basically enforcing civil rights laws. You see them going to cut with the SAVE Act. They're going to bring what's called the SAVE Act back, and that is an attack on voting rights. You're going to see them have an attack on Social Security. Social Security is the number one program that offsets poverty for Black elderly. And so when you begin to cut those benefits from Social Security, you're going to see a number of African American elderly fall into deeper poverty. And so what we are seeing is a full assault of the Black and brown communities all across the nation. You are seeing that they're using um, ICE and other police states, getting in contracts with today. Just in Kansas, they had a contract with the Attorney General on using ICE as folks who can basically just stop you and do stop and frisk all across the nation. So we're going to see a number of assaults on our freedoms, and it's going to come down to, we better get ready for this next election in the midterms, because if we do not get everything put in place for this next election, they already have full control of, but they will even have more control with more House seats, and so it's going to be devastating.
Very much so. Wow, wow. No, that's I mean, a great summary, and it's really unfortunate that they fooled so many people. I think Trump had probably 48% of the black vote this time around than any other Republican president has ever had in the nation's history. It was almost 50% of the black vote. So it shows you how we've seen this transition.
Well, just remember, it was just the increase.
Yeah.
Increase was higher.
Yeah, the increase was higher.
Very, very little overall.
No, yeah, increase.
But his increase was higher.
Yeah.
And I don't want to jump in,
Yeah.
but the one thing that gets me, though, is I'm a numbers guy. And and one of the big things about the numbers that I dove into, because, we like to be first. Everybody wants to be first and say stuff before all the information is gathered. And there were a lot of, our people who decided to go and vote for him. But I, honestly, once you start looking at it, it wasn't a whole lot more than what's normal. It was an increase. But I think what offset it was so many fewer people just voted overall. I
Yeah.
mean, 90 million people did not vote.
Mm-hmm.
If 90 million people had voted for Mickey Mouse, then Mickey Mouse would have won the election.
Yeah.
Because Trump didn't, I rarely call him that. His name to me is Cheeto. You know, he's
Mm-hmm.
Madam Vice President Cheeto.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that may be wrong to say, but that's how I see it. And, but
That's true.
he only increased his total vote count
Mm-hmm.
by under 1 million from last time. So
Yeah.
he didn't do it.
He didn't
gain.
just dominate, but
Yeah.
well, he did pick up
Right.
from his
Yeah, he picked up,
first
but
administration, right?
he didn't do
Right.
like how you would expect.
Yeah.
He didn't pick up from how you would expect a big. Oh, this is a referendum.
Yeah.
And the part that gets me I'll be quiet after this here to let you finish. I don't like one thing that is brought up is like this was some kind of referendum or like we really turned out
Right.
because when it's all said and done, 92% of black women voted for him for
Kamala.
and
Yeah.
88% of black men voted for him. Total
Yes.
number.
Yes.
But then also 81% of Jewish people
Mm-hmm.
voted for Kamala. And unfortunately, we like to put all Latino people in one.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if I'm not mistaken, it was 67% of Latino women as a
Yeah.
whole voted for Kamala.
Yeah.
A lot of the men didn't, but it was based on what country you came from.
Yeah.
And that played a big part in it. But the biggest thing I think that hurt us and got us in this situation where now we have to fight and have to deal
Mm-hmm.
with everything is because of the fact that too many people sat on their behinds
And didn't vote.
and did not vote and was so
Yeah.
quick to always want to talk about what others were doing and
Yeah.
she's not really this and
Yeah.
they're all the same.
Yeah.
And right now they're learning.
And so now they're feeling the pain
Yes.
because I guarantee you it's not just people in blue states, people in red states are hurting too.
Yes.
And so that's when
Yeah.
it's really going to hit the fan when his own base is starting to feel the impacts of all these changes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but the interesting thing though, Ruben, is why aren't more Republicans or even just evangelical Christians speaking out against this? We're supposed to help the lowly, the disenfranchised, the poor, those who are suffering. Why aren't more Christians and more clergy or pastors stepping up and saying, okay, enough is enough? Why are they just turning a blind eye to all of this foolishness that's going on?
Well, I can show you a number of what's called sign-on forms, and on these sign-on forms by pastors all over the country who were against the agenda of this president. But we also have to remember that we are in a nation that used religion to actually start the Ku Klux Klan. We're in a nation that used religion to start the John Birch Society, and we are in many of the white national Christians were some of the most vigilant people that were against Dr. King and the civil rights movement. And so it's nothing new. It's nothing new that that we have those on the right who still believe that God is white, Jesus was white, and that all the disciples were white, and that they have what's called a manifest destiny to be able to go wherever they put the soles of their feet to control. And they believe that that is still a referendum that was given to them by God. And one of the things that happened, as we know, in like the late 80s, was there was even in the African American church, there was a move from prophetic preaching to what was called prosperity preaching. And that prosperity preaching was centered around patriarchalism. It was centered around those who had the basically men who had the right to control their homes. And so that type of conservatism was preached not only just in churches, but it was preached where many of our young boys go, and that is on the football field and the basketball field. And so you saw a lot of preachers who actually use sports religious folks who use sports to actually infiltrate Black communities and talk to them about how God has, will prosper them through hard work. And if you just do certain things, you can move from being the poor to the rich. And if you just believe in this scripture, and so we saw a lot of that conservative that moved into our communities, and which many of us still hold on to. And that is why you saw a rejection by many African American men, because they were taught and were brought up in this conservative atmosphere that women were not supposed to be the lead of anything. And so when I had conversations with men and I talked to them about um, that, we saw Esther as a leader in the Bible. We saw one of the most incredible women ever, with Harriet Tubman lead. We can name the women who have led our country across the board in every field. But this conservative nationalism narrative is the foundation of our country, of hard work. If you just work hard, you can overcome anything. And I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me is not used just in liberal churches, but also progressive churches. I mean, in conservative churches. And so that means if don't have the faith, it's on you. And so we had this mixture of conservatism that was moved in, not just the white community, but Black communities. And that's why we saw a lot of Black men still holding on to that. And so we have to do a better job of explaining scriptures in our churches, explaining the giving a full critique, doing narrative. A lot of folks don't know how to critique scripture, and they just believe that anybody can just jump up in a pulpit and start preaching, and 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 so um, so and, and so that's why we have a lot of ignorant folk that are standing up telling our people a lot of ignorant things. And we saw that in how people talked about their politics also. And so we have to do a better job of countering that narrative, that God only loves those who are in power, when God has always been a God also of the oppressed, and and make sure that we are doing the things that God has called us to do, and that is to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, shelter the homeless, and that goes through, and that's part of our policy. Our policy should be a moral contract with the people, and it is what Reverend Barber is talking about now. It's what Dr. King called out, and that we are having a moral standard in doing what's right, and that is being replaced in this administration. It is about power.
Oh, it's about power, the structures and the systems. That's deep. You want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I will say this one thing. One of the main parts that I always talk about is patriarchy is a real thing, no matter how much. Because when we talk about this and we think about what about just your neighborhood and your life? Everybody know Big Mama. Everybody know that you better not leave, Aunt Dolores or whoever else's door open. We all know we've all been led by women. The first person that ever taught us a lot of the stuff in our lives was a woman.
A woman.
And it's not about the old
Absolutely.
single mama thing. I'm talking about just women, period. The women, because I've got to travel around the world. And it's this idea of the woman is somehow not in a leadership position is very Eurocentric. And I think that's part of the thing that has happened with us when it came to, and I don't want to say brainwashing because that's a hard one, but when you've just been indoctrinated into a system, you take on that.
You take on that.
Because just like how we are concerned about our families and stuff like that, they are too.
Yeah.
And so when we look at everybody as specifically an enemy, we can't always see what their motivation is behind what they're doing. Now, we can see the wrong in it. We can see how off it is. We can see how crazy they look. But to them, in their eyes, they've justified that this is by any means necessary. Well, my by any means necessary was very different.
Yeah.
And so it's funny you mentioned like how the church changed. Pastors always talk about that. God is not a genie. God is not a magic wish. This is not Santa Claus. Yeah. So all of this, when you start to build that when it's in the home, Then you start to build this when it's in church, then it's in school, and then it's also in how we look at society. We will take a person who is rich and assume that they somehow are better.
That's
somehow
right.
that they are smarter, somehow that they are worthy of whatever it is. I like Kanye West for his music. I could have never heard him talk a day in my life, and it would have been fine. But he felt the need to open his mouth and show us how not smart he is.
Suck his foot in his mouth.
A person has said, I don't read. Why are people following him?
Yeah.
And the response I get the most times is, but he's smart though. He made college dropout. He did. What does that have to do with anything? And then, so here it is when it came to Kamala Harris, when Madam Harris, there was so much, I'll say it this way. In conspiracy theories, we love a good conspiracy theory. Conspiracy theories always sound good because there's a little grain of truth in it. And then on top of that little grain of truth, there's enough, just a smidge enough of, why is that? And then therefore it just grabs you. And that's the hook. And it pulls you in. And so it was so weird how often people could hear, Kamala's not black. Where did that come from?
Well, just like
and then people believe
it. Well, just like they said, Barack Obama was from Africa. He's not a citizen. He can't run for president.
Even back then, I used to argue with people that was like, well, he's a Muslim. I was like, so where in the Constitution does it say a Muslim can't run for office?
Right.
So what difference does it make? What you're doing is you're trying to create a tribalistic, purity test amongst what an American is. And what that means is if they can't see, white people can't see themselves centered in all things, including in religion. If they don't see them as the center,
that's right.
Then everything else is wrong.
Everything else is wrong.
And then, but guess what?
And who says, why do they get to set in that narrative and place the identity of what we should look like?
But guess what? There's a lot of black people who fall in line with that. We go to a white source just to validate whether or not something was true or not. And so, but then again, we'll listen to whatever a white person says to us that's negative about one of our own. And we'll put all the stock in it, but we won't put none of the stock in the other ones.
Yeah. Okay. So okay. So Ruben, and that's a good segue because also the administration is, to your point about ISIS and trying to cleanse the country, if you will, right? Are trying to have this mass exodus and push all the brown people out. At the same time, or even Haitians, anyone that doesn't look like them, right? But at the same time, they are trying to open up the floodgates from white Africans coming here from Africa. And saying, hey, this is a better place. If you're not being treated the way you should be treated in Africa, it's okay to come to America. So why do we have the double standard? Oh, we need to ship everybody out who's not American here, but yet, even if you were born here, even natural birthright, it's citizenship. It's not even valid anymore. Or they're trying to take that right away of birthright citizenship. So why is it okay to bring Africans here, white Africans to America, but then it's not okay to keep the people here, the Hispanics or Haitians who were born here. It's not okay to keep them here. I just see this double standard. I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, people just sometimes they just listen to Donald Trump and they seen him just talk about a lot of different things. He was a reality show a host who loved controversy. And so people kind of, I don't think, took him seriously about what he was saying. And from day one, Donald Trump has told America that who he is. And he is a believer in Andrew Jackson, one of the most racist presidents of our in our country. He hired Polish immigrants to finish his hotels in New York, and therefore he used those white immigrants to keep our black and brown people from working on his hotels, and they ended up suing him for $1 million because he even cheated them. And so he is who he says he is, and that is he is a white man who believes that the in the original Constitution. And if you remember the original Constitution, it was only written for property owners, white male property owners. And so he believes that the Constitution applies to him and white people like him. And he actually it blows his mind to believe that other white males would not understand that they're supposed to be in charge. And so he is showing us through Project 2025, through his executive orders, uh, through his administration. As you know, he had a number of black men who did a variety of different sessions for him in black barbershops, going around the country and speaking for him. But when it came time for him to have his cabinet, none of those black men were put in anything. And so he was saying, yeah, yes. And he was, and yeah, and that one black job, and isn't it something that the one black person that he put in charge is probably the one only person who's qualified to be in the job he's in, because he actually did serve, while all those others came from no place. I mean, doing Fox Television, folks who had podcasts, and so he's saying, he's literally saying that the average white person, white male, is better than the college, Harvard graduate black person who has to have every degree, has been experienced for over 10 years to be, and so we are still at the space that we have to be 10 times better to actually to get in on an entry level when they can get put into a position. um, I mean, this they put in an alcoholic, a person who abused women, as the Secretary of Defense. And so that blows my mind, but it also tells exactly who Trump is. It tells you exactly what he's going to do. And if we are not ready, again, we are looking at the third, not just reconstruction, but post reconstruction. And if you remember, post reconstruction is where the Ku Klux Klan come in and begin to lynch. It is the white lash against black progress in America. And Trump has laid the grounds, and we have to be ready. And in all aspects to be ready for this backlash that's coming.
Because it's almost like, well, it's almost like Jim Crow 2.0. And
Yeah.
also to that point, Ruben, he exonerated
the January 6th.
the January 6th insurrectionists. So pardon all of them. So what that tells me is he's not going to be fighting white domestic terrorism.
Well,
He's going to let all this go on in the country.
This is the one part about all of this that gets me. All right, well, it's two things. One, I'll get the controversial for me out first. I blame black people. And
We didn't do what we're supposed to do.
Right, but not only that is, I have sat in plenty of barbershops, even though I need a haircut right now, I have been to so many barbershops where it was like, it's not the president, it's the person behind the president. You got to know who these people are. You got to know what they're trying to do. Know all these plans. I'm talking about so many conspiracy brother all types of stuff. Oh, the real people behind. Always follow the money. And then you have Project 2025 did not come out in 2025. Since 21, we've known about this. Mm-hmm. And it's been being said. Remember, 2021 was still COVID.
Yeah.
You didn't but you was too busy fighting to go get haircuts, following behind the white people, trying to go up here. Yeah, I should be back in the restaurant right now, sitting down, coughing on people. Yeah, so what that my uncle passed away. I feel like I need to go to brunch now. Mm-hmm. I need grass on the wall so I can live. There was a bunch of those same people who, for some reason, felt like government is some alien, arbitrary entity that's somewhere else that we just have to adhere to, not realizing that it is literally a group of people. It is people over there that you voted over here for to go handle our tax money and give us the resources we need. Mm-hmm. That is government.
Yep.
And so
And we
when you
need
see
it, and
you're
we've
right,
got to have
government
it.
is a necessity
Yeah,
that we
it's
have
not
to have.
evil. Government helps
Right.
people.
But when people have built in so long all of these fears of what government is, because government is synonymous with the man, which are two separate things. No, the government is an armed weapon that has been used against people.
Yep.
Because the people who were in there had those views.
Yes.
You know, and
Big
so when
government,
people,
bureaucracy.
right, bureaucracy, and the people who you typically hated all of that, or the people who were trying to do something they had no business doing.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to have to go through making sure my electricity box for my tenants are right. I'm sick of having to wait for, it's going to take a week for somebody to come out here. I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
And so we watched, remember, we knew all the conspiracies. We knew all of the stuff that was happening to MLK, Medgar Evers, and everybody else. We knew all of this stuff, but yet when it's right here put in front of you.
And right in front of our face.
Put in front of you, they're like, oh, I didn't know Stephen Miller was that guy. I didn't know who Steve Bannon was. These people, I didn't know who Christopher Rufo. The people who told you explicitly what they were doing.
We tried to tell you. Why didn't you listen? Take them for what they're worth.
Especially if you are conspiracy brother.
That's right.
And I was like, how is it that you could sit up here and be conspiracy brother and see a meme come across and automatically believe it when it's against somebody black, but you won't believe what's blatantly in front of you? You know, yeah, Trump was in a lot of songs. He was in a lot of songs. He was a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he did. Whether the right has did a great job in intertwining the issues, and so as African Americans have in this country always been the conscience of America, and we've talked about the corruption that was in the FBI and the DOJ, and the corruption that was in, and so what Trump did was a great job of saying, yes, see, there is corruption, there is racism in these different departments. But what he also did was go to the white community and say, but the corruption is against you. It's not against these black folk. It's against you. And so, but he wasn't telling his black constituents in that. He was telling white folks, you're the ones. You white men are the ones who are being discriminated against, and that's why we need to get rid of affirmative action. That's why we need to get rid of DEI. That's why we need to get rid of all these programs, because it's for. Yeah, but he used the same arguments that we had. The same arguments. He basically co-opted the civil rights movement's argument. He co-opted that language and used it for white folk in the white communities. And so that's why a lot of folks actually got mixed up by his message.
Right, which makes it all the worse because, again, if you know this, this is 2025. All right, we can say it was 2024. Guess what we've had since 2024? The internet. Everybody's walking around with this. There is nothing in the world that a person can say to you that you can't say, oh, that really happened?
Why can't you fact check it?
See.
You can fact check that.
But you'll have people who, and that's part of our fault. We got so sensationalized because I do not believe that all this stuff stemmed solely from Trump this election. All right, we know when President Obama got in,
he was
there was a huge thing that was like, I refuse. But what happened is he's lasted for 8 years. There could have been an opportunity. There were so many times, and this is where I was going to say the second part. The first part is I blame black folks who fell for all this stuff, who knew better.
Just foolish. You knew better, so you should have done better.
Then it was and I'm not going to use the word progressive. I'm going to use the word liberal democratic ones who were so busy trying to hold on to that one Iowa white guy, Farmer Joe, or whoever else somewhere, that they would overlook all of the little things that are happening, the microaggressions, the small little things.
Yep.
They saw, if you work for MSNBC, CNN, even Fox News, or any other, CBS, ABC, and you know that there's a guy by the name of Christopher Rufo who sat up here and says, out loud, I'm going to make woke and I'm sorry, what's the other one for the universe? CRT equate to everything bad.
Critical race theory.
If he says that, and then they run a campaign doing that, you have levers of power just as well. We cannot sit up here and blame Tucker Carlson on everything.
Oh no, absolutely not.
These people in here, from a Rachel Maddow on down, I'm not saying that these people are bad people, but what I'm saying is they had, instead of always being on the defense of of I'll say like this, instead of always lending validity to the BS, they allowed it to go by asking the questions on it. So for instance,
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
it, yeah, if for instance, if and I like to use, I'm still in the analogy from someone else. I hate that I forgot who I got it from, but the tea versus water. If me and you were having a conversation about how we think people should drink, and you say, I think people should have tea, and I say, well, I think water should be it. We can't have a third person on talking about, I don't think people should be able to drink at all.
Yeah.
That is not part of the conversation. But then what happened is these people, for fairness and equality, well, let's go talk to them. And why do you feel that this should be this? No.
Yeah.
You used to let them people stand on the corner and holler into the wind.
And they hijacked the narrative.
And they allow these people to now you set the person at the table, and now you have all those people who casually watch the news, or who casually go to church, or who casually know Terrence and the one other black person at their job, now believe that this is a real conversation that people are having.
Yeah.
And now we're stuck having to always defend this. Why are we talking about that? Why are we talking about these things?
Yeah, we were behind it. And then the assault on DE&I initiatives that's obviously impacting the nation. And I know, Ruben, you kind of touched on it. You saw the horrific helicopter plane accident in D.C. And the first thing Trump jumped on was, it's because of D&I policies.
And
that had first of all, you didn't even know the identity of the pilots. So why are you blaming it on D&I? But it worked, and it worked. It's fear-mongering, fear-mongering, fear-mongering. And that's all his agenda has been, is driving fear into white America. And it's worked.
Yes.
Right. Now, first, I got to go back and just kind of talk about what you were just saying, and that was that um, that a narrative that has been put out there that is just is hard to overcome, and that is, we have to go after the blue collar, and when they said blue collar, they usually were talking about basically white folks in Iowa or different places. It was when we know that a large portion, the Democratic Party should have understood that there was a large portion of African Americans who were saying, I'm just not going to vote. And so they did not put resources into grassroots media like this right here. They should have been coming on your shows. They should put in black newspapers across the country. They should have been using black radio, but they did not put the resources in there. I think that was one of the biggest things that they lost out on. And so now as we move here with to answer your question with the DEI assault, and that is again, the basically the division that has been caused as African Americans moved into spaces such as Howard University, Wilberforce, um, uh, um, Morehouse, and all these different spaces. There also became a kind of division between blacks in our community, those who are educated, those who didn't have. And so it's has been a way to always use an edge, a wedge between um, black African Americans who have got an education. So you saw the first assault on affirmative action really back in 2000, where they used, I cannot remember this African American's name, who actually, they used him to actually put forth a lawsuit against affirmative action in California. And then they use Asian Americans also to bring lawsuits around the country at Harvard, Texas, North Carolina, and so they began to use and to make DEI and affirmative action the buzzword that Black people are getting somehow getting um, better benefits and priority over whites, and so and Asians, and so that narrative has been going on for almost uh, since affirmative action and Richard Nixon actually put it in place, and so we had to fight this stereotype that, and then one of the persons, and let me back up, one of the persons who actually voiced opposition to affirmative action was a black man put on the Supreme Court named Clarence Thomas. And so they use a black man to say, yes, I had affirmative action, but I really shouldn't have had it because I feel guilty about it. And so he became the face as an opposition against affirmative action. And so then and so now they use people like Candace Owens. They use Byron Donalds. They use Tim Scott. They use a figurehead African American to say absolutely to say, well, we cannot discriminate against people by using discrimination when we know darn well it's not discrimination. It is affirmative. There are no affirmative action was not for unqualified African Americans. You had to be the best of the best to actually receive any consideration on applications, on job applications to get in these jobs. And so we have to do, again, as my brother said, we have to do a better job of educating us, because a lot of folks, our memories are short term. They don't even remember. Many folks don't even remember what they had seen on January 6th. We saw it. We saw white folk crawling up. I mean, if they were crawling up the side of the building to get into. Uh, eh,
And to part
they
and to
were
for the Trump to pardon them, that is
yes,
that
they
is
were.
assault on our
But you
Constitution.
got to remember, there's an optic to it. To him, and let's be honest, what is it? 14 within 24 hours, I think 14 of them were rearrested. And
Yeah,
then some of them were told to be held, like the
I
guy
think a
from,
couple of
I
them
mean, here in
died.
Houston, like one of them was from
Yeah.
Houston, who they said, do not let him out.
Mm-hmm.
They let him out. This dude was on a manhunt for him behind messing with a
Yeah.
child.
But see
So,
what, and the bad thing is that Trump was supposed to be pro police officers, pro police. But do you realize that
there's-
some police died
yeah,
and
but there's
were
nothing-
injured?
But see, this is what I'm saying.
That's the hypocrisy.
There's nothing. Well, hypocrisy is America's
That
favorite
people don't
pastime.
see.
That America's
Yeah.
favorite pastime is
Yeah.
hypocrisy. That's what we live in. We live and breathe in it.
Yeah.
We swim in it. We do not feel like we have arrived until we can be hypocritical in something. But it's so saying, like, that's part of the thing. When Cheeto sat up here, anything he says, all you have to do is say, I can see better than I can hear, you know what I'm saying, or whatever else. I heard you say all this stuff. What are you showing me?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because if you had walked up to these same, and I've done this because as you can see, I'm an engager. I will engage with whoever. If you bring that up, you were bold enough to say it out loud, that means I'm bold enough to talk about it out loud with you. But one of the things that I notice is whenever they say all of this stuff and you ask them, where have you seen him do insert whatever it is?
Mm-hmm.
When did he care about black people? Because he took a picture with Mike Tyson? Like, so if that's the case, then the Klan has taken pictures with all kinds of people. Why are you up here talking about you canceling somebody for some word they said then? They took a picture with somebody black before. So even within our own self, and this, trust me, this is not a hate, because I love my people, I love myself, but I think we have become so entrenched with trying to adhere to the standard of whiteness that we are now the new blackface.
Well, that's who
We are blackface walking around operating for them
Yes,
in the sense. And I'm like, it's so many. So like when you brought up,
we assimilate with the culture.
but you don't have
That's
to.
it.
But you can assimilate
Yeah.
as far as for all right. We all may listen to Coldplay together. We
Right.
may all go out
Or
here
pop
and,
culture. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
fine. You can assimilate. You can. Oh, I like those.
But
outfits.
don't lose your blackness
But you
in
never
the
lose who you are.
process.
Because let's be honest, there is no, in our essence, no blackness without whiteness. White folks created this. They're the ones responsible for ending it.
That's right.
And so that's why I'm really happy about this. Everybody's sitting back trying to let them handle it. But we got to deal with the consequences right along with them. Because now when people's backs gets against the wall, they're really going to be trying to pressure us and blame it on us. But we have to stand fast. And you may mention which I wanted to bring up. I thought about it because I was thinking about how that division happens within us when it comes to educated versus uneducated, and also with age. When you break a certain age, all of a sudden, we start looking at people younger as if that's a problem. Like, just because you have went to sleep and woken up more times than me does not necessarily mean you're always more advanced.
Yeah.
And so we need to understand that we are a network and we're a community. And at some point, we need every piece of this community, because we've always had to fight. We've always had to be proud of the talented Tims. We've always had to be proud and happy.
Yeah.
But too many times we were happy that the black face went into this position, but that person closed the door behind them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then we can't. But then we'll watch where white people will get in that position,
And they'll help other people.
and they'll help out all their family
So we
and
don't know
friends,
how to hold the ladder up to help bring up other
because
people.
we're so scared that we might lose our little
what
thing.
we've got. So it's like I got mine, you get yours.
And
Yeah.
I do not believe that we should be passing trauma, because a lot of stuff, the trauma is solely, and I'm sorry, a lot of stuff I think was just trauma we have.
Yeah.
That since I had to go through it, you deserve to go through it too.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry.
Good.
But well, and we have to remember, we have been a people of faith, and one of the things that's I always comes to mind, it says, "What does it prosper a man if he gains a whole world and loses souls?" And 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 we have to remember that as bad as it is here, as my brother said, he's traveled the world, and if you travel around the world, boy, I went to El Salvador, and I saw the poverty that those folks live in compared to what we call poverty here in America. I was in Vietnam, and I saw the poverty that was there. And coming back here, um, we have um, through Black folks sticking together, through the church, we made a bunch of gains, and we've gained a lot. We have, um, and as we became more prosperous, it also tells us, don't forget your God when you become prosperous. And a lot of us have moved away from any type of faith. And I'm not saying you have to be in the church. And I'm not just saying you have to be in a building, but there has to be something that roots you and grounds you. Um, that 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 in what you cannot lose your humanity. And in a lot of what we have in our songs today, in our movies today, we celebrate, a lot of times power and other shows that are showing folks killing each other. Black folks just basically serial killers in our own community. We have celebrated for too long, Black women being degraded in our music. That they now many have taken on the same type of degradation that men used to do to them. Now many times are doing themselves, and it goes back to what Carter G. Woodson has said. Some point, if we become so enslaved and so ignorant to our history, we won't have to be told to go to the back door. We'll just go by ourselves. And so a lot of the things we are doing to ourselves now, because we have been, we have, we have, again, as they say, not so much brainwashed, but we become many times prosperous. Even though we say we're in poverty, we still buying, we can somehow find enough money to buy Jordans. We can somehow find enough money to find a new technology. We can find money to have every phone that comes out. We can find, and so it is not just about just being brainwashed, but it's hard when you have been, you like your Starbucks, and we saying we need to boycott this place. Well, shoot, I got to go get my stuff from from Dillard's. I gotta wait a minute. And so it's hard to it's hard to get out of that when you are living a lifestyle and you have become used to that.
That's right. But
Yeah.
doesn't that mean that, because you talked about traveling all over, there are people who have never been to Egypt physically, but people are spiritually in Egypt. So I'm saying,
Man.
if you're in Egypt spiritually, that means, spiritually you feel like you're shackled, you're handcuffed, you are in bondage, you're in prison, right? And so people have that
Yeah.
mindset, so therefore they think they're powerless. So that's why I like to
Yeah.
do a show on these types of topics to try to make people or help people to feel empowered. That, yeah, you do have power, and your power was your vote. You should have exercised your vote to exercise your power.
And that's
And
one,
so, yeah, and
to
so,
add on to that, yeah, I really,
yeah,
I really, that's a point that should really be driven home, is because
yeah,
also our power does not stop only at the vote.
absolutely,
We have
absolutely,
to do the rest.
absolutely.
And yeah, it sucks. We have to pick up the phone and call. It sucks that you have to get out there
Yeah.
and tell people. It sucks that you have to do. But as long as we pay taxes on this land,
That's right.
we should have a say in every single
That's right.
aspect of what this land does.
That's right.
And
We should.
We need to stop
We have,
going
and
over.
we have a voice, and don't let anyone mute you.
Yes.
Don't let anybody. When I worked for corporate America, that's all they tried to do was mute me and shut me down, and it just made me even stronger. It made me rise even higher. Can't you tell? I'm really passionate about just helping not just our people, but just people in general to come up, be empowered, and and to make a difference in this world, to impact lives and make this world a better place. And this Trump administration is just tearing this country apart. I mean, it really is. And for people who voted for him, people of colors in particular, not saying anything about it, you were the ones who were foolish enough to vote for him. So why aren't you standing up against what you voted for? Because he's not delivering on his promises.
Well, I have my theory.
Where's the accountability?
I come from when it comes to dealing with finance and things like that, I still think the biggest thing is the sunk cost fallacy. And what that is pretty much where we believe that we've put so much into something that we don't know when to let it go because of the fear of that loss. So like if you bought an old beater car, I'm gonna fix this up, and after a while the car costs you $1,000. You put $35,000 into it. I think it's time to cut this away.
And the value of the car,
run.
yeah, and you still won't cut it loose.
Yeah, and so I think that's what happened. Is so many people have gotten themselves. They had to go so hard against their family. They had to go so hard against their friends, coworkers, on the internet for backing this guy. That now, even though that they see that the leopard is eating their face, they have to stick in there, because if I could just make it on through this here, I promise, going back to what you said earlier, Pastor, about the indoctrination of, hey, we're going to use the scripture. Hey, well, this is only a storm I got to go through right here. Hey, he weepeth in the night and endures in the morning. We're going to come with everything else to try to hold on to that, because cognitive dissonance. We're lost. We don't know what else to do. We see that there was something in front of us that is not right, but we have to hold on, because I invested all of this into this.
Absolutely.
And here we are.
Yeah.
There's a pastor. There was a pastor I was talking to, and he was telling me, he said, Ruben, I don't know how you can vote Democrat. This is about holiness. It's about holiness. And then I pointed out to him that that Elon Musk has 13 children by about 5 different women. And I said, so if it's about holiness, how do you support that? How do you justify that? How do you justify um, Trump's 35 convictions and him saying, I'm going to grab these women by the, you know what, and talking about his abuse? How do you justify that? How do you adjust that this man has lied about just about almost every subject, and including that you have Haitians eating dogs? How do you justify that? And how are you going to talk about holiness? And so I said, when you talk, I know that the conservative line is that we are against abortion and that we are against homosexuality in the LGBT community. I said, you use those. I said, but you forget about um, what is the root cause of what, if you believe that, if you absolutely believe that abortion is wrong, if you absolutely believe that that homosexuality is a sin, the word, as you have continued to try to use against me, it says that the root of all evil is greed. And so if you want to get if you want to get rid of the branches that you see as the branches, you first have to get rid of the root. And that is the greed that our country continues to basically use to destroy not just Americans, but other countries around the world. I mean, this man is literally trying to go and take Panama. He's trying to go and steal another country, Greenland. He's trying to
Canada.
steal Canada. I mean,
Yeah. It's
and it's
unbelievable.
all
And,
about
and what he's doing
and
is
give
lawless.
about greed. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
Well,
and
I
It,
think
it
he's
all
also
lying
he's
stems.
trying
about
to.
all of it. And so,
Yeah, I think
All
he's
of
also
it.
trying to throw as much as he can and see what sticks and see what people
Yeah.
do. So while everybody's up in the
absolutely.
tizzy, in the turmoil, then he can go on here and do, because I still believe that some of the stuff is the shell game. He's a con man. All right. At some point we gotta realize the dude's a crook. Felony.
Okay, he's a convicted
Hey,
felon.
he's a
Of
So
course.
grifter.
Yeah.
by doing
No
that,
person of color would have been in this position.
oh no, not at all.
Not at all.
Then you can't even get a job.
Oh, you can't even get a job. You can't even live in certain neighborhoods,
Yeah.
and you got a background of
so
conviction.
So you did it 22
You can't
years
even
ago.
vote.
Yeah,
You
he-
can't even vote.
He did his last year,
I
but
know.
we can't. But
And he was
Yeah.
able to
But,
vote and run for
If,
president.
but see, I think
if Barack Obama had 3 wives and 5 kids by 3 wives, there's no way he'd have been close to the presidency.
I've been saying this since 2015, before he got in when he first started running. I always said that Cheeto is the embodiment of what white people think black people are. Bad with money, aggressive, always want to fight,
Right.
brash, multiple baby mamas, lives off the government. Every negative black stereotype that white people have for black folks,
That's
they have in
actually him, who he
So-
is.
And that's why I think they attracted to him so much, because they really are attracted to a lot of black people, but they can't see past their own idea of whiteness. Because now this is something I stole from Amanda Seals, because I like this saying. I think this is great. She says there are white people and people who happen to be white. There is a huge difference. If you see the ideology of whiteness as your whole being, you are a white person. If it just so happens that you just do white stuff, like you like pumpkin spice or whatever else it is, then but you're who you are and you're consistent throughout. I'm not talking about those people.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about those.
Right.
I'm directing this at the white people. If you know that your life can't move without the entertainment of blacks, without the enjoyment, without the cool, without all of the other
That's
stuff
right.
of blackness, it is okay to just say you like black people, and you don't have to denigrate, disseminate, and then try to step on that. And the only thing I can think of, and I'm sorry, I know I can talk, is like when they used to talk about like people who were secretly gay.
No, yeah.
You know, and so they would do all this womanizing or do
Yeah.
all this stuff to try to, I ain't that way, and they would do all this extra. They'd be
Yeah.
like, well, hold on, no person does it. Like, what are you doing? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
You're obviously trying
Yeah.
to hide. And,
And,
so,
yeah.
and they do more and worse in order to
keep
put
it
off.
hidden. Yeah.
And I think that's what's happening. I think a lot of Euro Americans love us so much, but they can't, so they're doing everything they can. There's nowhere in the world you can tell me that you could listen to a person who traveled to another state, who does not go to that school, who went to a board meeting and told you that these books that talk about black folks should not be in there.
Get him off the shelf.
And you can sit back and say, yeah,
Oh, okay, that makes
that
sense.
makes sense. I'm in
Yeah.
Iowa, they're in
Why
North
do we not?
Carolina.
Why do we need to talk about Black
Oh,
history?
you know what? We shouldn't have immigrants. Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand. I'm in Ohio, which there are none, and you're in Texas. But I don't need these Mexicans. When's the last Mexican you saw?
Yeah.
You look at their town records. There's 4% Hispanic. So
Yeah.
I guess they taking all the jobs, right?
Yeah. So, and let's pivot right quick too, because Ruben, you touched on, what's going on in other countries, and because I want to talk about how this impacts the worldview of the U.S. because this could potentially change us from the land of opportunity to the land of mediocrity.
Yeah.
Because what Trump also is doing, I don't know if he's pulled the trigger yet, but he was also talking about stopping the USAID
Yeah.
from that's going to South Africa and the funding that's going to
Yes.
South Africa. And guess what? They're going to retaliate. And South Africa said, "Well, we're going to cut off our exports.
Yep.
You guys aren't going to import our minerals."
Yep.
And so, if they cut that off, that we generate billions of dollars from importing minerals from South Africa. So, I mean, Ruben, how do you think that's going to play out? Because that's going to be really devastating to our economy. if that
Well,
relationship continues to be contaminated.
and and what you're talking about now is the policies that are laying the groundwork for um, it's going to come back real quick in the next couple of months because they're going to have the battle for the appropriations bill, and therefore um, the Democrats are going to be fighting to put back many of the funds that go to these U.S. aid and all these different other programs, and the Republicans are going to try to gut everything because they want to privatize everything. So therefore, um, if they can gut all these programs, this is literally what the Republicans do. They say that the government is run inefficiently. So elect us so that we can prove it that is terrible government. And so as they get elected in, they try to destroy the government because they want to give their buddies the piece of the pie. And so you privatize this piece, we're going to be able to send, have um, folks go over and mine Africa and get all the minerals that we need to make sure that our computers are running. And so they're going to try to piecemeal it out. And so what you're seeing is literally that plan in progress to actually gut all these programs so that we can then privatize and have the oligarchy control our country. And so that's also part of putting incompetent people into into different agencies and over different agencies, because if they're incompetent and they destroy those, then we have to go and then find private organizations that actually take those things over. So you have one of the sickest men um, basically put over our health in RFK. I mean, the guy is. I mean, the guy was on steroids. He heroin addict. Had, as he said, worms in his brain, all type of different things. And so basically, he has had in America Samoa, he had kids dying because they didn't get vaccinated. We now have a breakout of measles in places like Tennessee and Texas. You have and so what they're trying to do basically is, again, what going back to Nixon's plan. They call it 2025 now, but it was basically the Empowerment Act, and basically divesting and sucking all the money and all the funding out of all these different programs across the world, and which is also, again, um, is going to impact America, because we know even if he gets rid of some of the immigration that's coming in, you're still going to have folks from other countries coming in who now who who will bring disease, because we are not working on helping other folks get the medicines and the things that they need. And so it impacts us in every different way. We're seeing right now, because of basically unregulated companies with eggs. And the reason why we're having a higher price in eggs is because the shortage is because there was basically disease in the eggs, and that was being shipped across our country. And so they are going to try to deregulate everything because they want to privatize everything from social security to aid that's going across the world. And so we are seeing the rich, again, the greed, not and we don't have anything against people getting rich, but it is the greed, the avarice that
And more.
is
It's never
which
enough. And
which
but
eh,
and back to that point,
yeah.
they're cutting all these government agencies and funding and Medicare and all this stuff. And but they're going to take all of that money they're freeing up to give the tax cuts to the rich,
Right.
to the billionaires. So they're the ones who's standing in position to gain from all these cuts to these government agencies that people don't realize. And Elon Musk, isn't that a conflict of interest? He's got SpaceX. He's getting, that's how he's been funded over all these years. The government has been giving me all these contracts and money.
He's got right now $40 billion worth of contracts. But what's even crazier?
Yeah, but he says government is too big. He wants it. That's how he's been thriving from the government.
But see, all right. So, and I want to back up. I will back up just a little bit on one thing because I 100% agree with all that's being said on that. But I want to add one other thing that I noticed. So, like, I always look at the story. Like, what is the story that we're that's being told? So we look at Elon Musk, South African, apartheid South African. I'm sorry, it just slipped me the other guy's name who's behind Trump as well, too. Apartheid South African. There's 3 apartheid South African people who are billionaires on his
Peter
cat.
Who's it?
Yeah, Peter Thiel and one more. Yes.
There's 3 of them.
Yes, it's 3 total. There's going to be something in a word that I know is pretty much dead now, but that people use all the time. Intersectionality. There's going to be a problem because apartheid South Africa is based on 3% of the people, 7% of the people having 90% of the land.
Yeah.
That's why they're up here doing all that kind of stuff now.
Yeah.
So he's a person who lied. I still think he lied about the autism thing because it's funny that he all of a sudden was autistic when people started going against him and he lost favor.
Right.
Now he was sick all of a sudden. And he put the story out. No family has acknowledged no one. So I look at this here. So Arab Spring started on Twitter. Like the whole thing, like when people started recognizing. When that happened and you saw how much you could control the narrative of the story, we had to stop that. Yeah. Elon Musk stepped in, and what the FBI used to do and the CIA used to do in COINTELPRO, now you have tech bros doing. I don't like that the information is going around about me. I'll buy the news source. Amazon, Jeff Bezos buys the Washington Post. Michael Bloomberg owns Bloomberg, and then he bought the other one. Then another guy bought the LA Times. So you start having these people who, we want to control the narrative. If we can control the narrative, then we can dictate what's happening and how we may move forward. So then you have from that, so you got the South Africans doing this here. Then you have your Steve Bannon, who's a globalist, who's behind Trump as well. And he's like, I'm just trying to rule the world. I don't care about all the rest of this stuff.
Of course not.
So I don't care what by any means necessary. As long as I can be at the front of it, I'm fine. Then you have Stephen Miller, a devout white nationalist, and all the rest of them who are hanging around. Like right now, President Trump just made this whole thing about Romania needs to leave Andrew Tate alone. Why? One, that's not your country, and it's not anything dealing with you. But that idea is something that is very close to Stephen Miller. They want this white nationalist ethno-state. So you have all these different identities that are around because I was the one who kept saying that, these people aren't bending the knee to Trump. They're checking on their investment. They paid him, and they know that he's a real simple one. He's a very loose-moral person. So you have to go with the person, that's where jealousy comes from, because when you know that your person can go off with anybody at any time, you start popping up at their job. You start doing all this kind of stuff. And they were there to check on their investment to make sure he did what they wanted to be done. And they knew he was lazy. So guess what Elon Musk did? He had to tell this story. The farmers in South Africa. You mean your old home? Go home if it's a problem. You were an illegal immigrant.
That's right.
You notice he was not big on the immigration thing. That was Stephen Miller.
That was Miller.
You follow what I'm saying? So it's these different people who are all behind. And it collected where Project 2025 gave a little bit, how you were saying, piecing it out, a little bit to everybody. How do we rob the government? The biggest heist we can have. There's $17 trillion sitting there. How much of that we can get? How much can we get?
Just a gold mine.
What's the name wants to go to Mars for some stupid reason. He want to go to Mars. What is he going to do when he get there? He can't terraform it. So what is he going to do? So the story is, so at least I can steal him. I can live out this fantasy life I want. So the rest of them say, well, you're not going to be the only one. So they all start, and I'm sorry, I'm going long, but they want to tell the story. So when we step back and look at this story that's being told and see it from that spot, you can easily spot the grift. You can spot that it's, how is a prejudiced white nationalists going to affect my life if they have positions of power? Oh, they're going to use the word DEI. And what I do is I always say, what does DEI stand for? Don't use DEI. I don't know what DEI means. I need you to say it out. So which part of diversity, equity, inclusion, and assistance are you against?
Yeah.
I need to know which one. And so we have to be able to start fighting back because they're telling a story.
Oh, yeah.
And then presenting that story online in a way with the platforms that they own. And we are falling for it because we're being sold a story on, like you said, the Haitians are eating dogs. The Hispanics are coming and stealing your jobs. Black folks didn't earn a single thing. They're getting these positions here. How did all this stuff work? Because they were able to tell a story. And we have to see that story and then be able to combat it.
Absolutely. Because part of this, so we've raised some great points tonight, and part of this is what's next? Where do we go from here? How do we fight back, to your point? You know, we a lot of us now, we're irritated, we're agitated, we're upset, we're angry, but we've got to foster that in a positive way to make a difference, to fight back, right? Peacefully, but impactfully. And so that's where I want us to focus on before we wrap up and close the show is, okay, we know all these issues are going on. We know they're talking about merit-based systems, which that was just another con. It has nothing to do with merit-based because you got people in your cabinet who aren't even qualified to run anything in the government. So, Ruben, I mean, what would be your suggestion? Like, how do we galvanize Black folks or people of color, and white people can join us too? How do we galvanize a movement to fight back, protest, even the companies that dial back DE&I policies? What do we do? We've got to do something. It's not enough to just talk about it. How do we put action to this, to what we're saying?
Well, it's a shame that we always have to have a crisis before we become community. And so once again, it's happening that the crisis, is going to, I think, begin to move us to understanding that we have to begin to focus on us. And when I say that, um, the the civil rights movement, while led by African American people, it actually benefited everyone. It benefited white women. It benefited the disabled. It benefited the LGBT community. It benefited the elderly. It benefited everyone. The Voting Rights Act that we fought for didn't just benefit Black people. It benefited everyone. Open accommodations. So everything that we fought for, it always helped everyone. But it first became because we focused on making us better. And I think the one thing that we need to understand, we have to, uh, we can't be, as Dr. King said, I can't be all that you can't be all that you can be until I'm all that I can be. And so we have to begin to focus on our communities and to put us back together again. I really think there has to be in our communities um, a basically healing services where we come together and we forgive one another for our own trespasses against one another. We need to work on building us, and as we build us, what it does, it 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 strengthens all of America. I was sitting. Can you guys hear me? Because I know it kind of went out sound, but I uh I went to a gathering of a number of people in the place that I live, and they had at the Super Bowl. It was basically a huge Super Bowl party, but most of the people that was at this gathering were Caucasians. They were white, and so I'm sitting there. I'm sitting in the seat, and the halftime show comes on. And so it's a huge space, but they had a big giant screen that was in the middle. And so we were actually all spread out. But when the halftime show came on, all the people came and gathered in front of that big screen and began to watch Kendrick Lamar. And and as they sit there, um, they waited. Um, until he got to the song, they not like us. And they repeated all the words. They were repeating all the words to the song, y'all. And you saw the power that even though they disagreed with a lot of stuff that was going on, you saw the power of this African American man, this black man, standing up for and being unapologetically black. And they were standing there and they did not move. I'm telling you, they were locked in, focused on that performance. And that is the power that we have. And we have to understand the power that and the magnetism, the what the Bible calls the charismata. It is a charisma that we have, a power that we launch every time we walk into a room. And when we begin to understand and harness that power and who we are, it always affects America for the better. It doesn't. African American people, black folk, taught America how to forgive. We should be the most angriest hoax on the planet. It should. If we did like anybody else, we would be in picked up arms a long time ago. We would have did what in the movie Django, where the the he talks about if it was me as a white man, I would have slit my father's throat because of what he did. But that is not the anger that we bring. We bring a serious love for people, um, a ability to forgive our worst enemies, ability to in what the Bible talked about. When it said that nothing good comes from Jerusalem, Nazareth. Many people say nothing good comes from the neighborhoods that we're in, but actually, we get the the best musicians, the best athletes. I mean, going to and all across. And so, when we understand the power of who we are and begin to focus on what we bring to this country and in every community, I think that is how we understand and bring and change this thing around. But if we're trying to get so, you know, help everybody else without first begin to focus on who we are, I don't know if we're going to get there.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Well, we gotta keep hope alive. It's not gonna be an overnight process, but
no,
we've gotta get started. I mean, like you said, it's just it's too pivotal to the future of our generations, future of our family, of the country. In 2 years we gotta vote again. So if they're
got
not
to vote.
in position by then, we got another two to go. It's really gonna be
Yeah.
devastating.
And that's the roughest part. The midterm elections are the roughest for us to turn out. And so we're going to have to get, and we have to, and that's going to be major for us to turn around what's happening in our country is the midterms.
Right. Absolutely, I agree. So
I will.
yeah.
I will say one thing. I agree wholeheartedly. I think there's also something I wish we can add. I really think a solution is we need to actually, and I don't want to use the generic come together, but we have to understand the roles of each person. Like I like sports. I like football. You're talking about Super Bowl and stuff like that. I don't care how great a quarterback you are. No offensive line, you're not going to be able to get the ball off.
Well, we
As
saw that in the Super
We
Bowl.
saw
What did
that.
Chiefs do?
Right. And that's what I'm saying. And they couldn't do nothing.
They couldn't do nothing.
And
They had the
so-
best quarterback in the league,
Right.
or we thought.
And so all of these aspects. So what I think tends to happen too often with us is we start to create this purity test amongst each other. We're like, oh, well, because you did this one thing back in 1999, you can't be over here talking about this. So I need you to stay over here in this box. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, the skill that person has is beneficial for right now. You need a 3-strategy approach. You need inside, outside, and then person lobbying from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So yes, all right, guess what? We might need to start having people register as Republican and start voting in this area where it's very tight. You know what I'm saying? Start making, now they got an answer to you. You Democrats are not going to win in backwoods Arkansas. So guess what you need to do? Change it over and be the same Trojan horse that they would be to you. But then also when you're at work, be bring people to your side. Start being an engager in that way.
Yeah.
And then those who sit up here, and I'm gonna give this really quick story. I'm sorry. Like I was in corporate. I was sitting in a meeting with all the high ups, and this is when COVID started. And I'll never forget. And I have a habit sometimes of words just coming out, and I can't grab.
No,
them back.
you don't have a filter.
I have no filter. I tried once.
He's unfiltered.
Yeah, I think I was like 7. I had one. I don't know what happened to it. So I tried. And what ended up happening, so this guy is sitting here like, we're COVID and all this kind of stuff, and we're going to start, with the switch over, and these things are going to happen. And this guy, who is 4th from the top of this major corporation, says, yeah, just make sure you're careful, if you order Chinese food or something like that, we'll make sure nobody gets COVID and brings it up in here. And before I could say, I said, what did you talk?
Oh, wow.
Dude, you don't get COVID from a food bag? Like, that one... Just the simplistic, like the
ignorance.
thought did not make sense. And before I could think about it, because he didn't smile, he wasn't joking.
He was serious.
He was serious. And I'm like, it's 3 Asian people sitting right here behind me.
Just disrespect.
And I'm like,
Oh my goodness.
if that had stayed there, out there, there could have been a few people who started to believe that. Now,
That's
again,
right.
I have to deal with the ramifications, or other people of my team have to deal with the ramifications of this stupidity that was floated by high ups that's sitting out there. But since it was called out, then all of a sudden you start having, yeah, why are you saying it? And then all of a sudden it was a bunch of people saying it,
Yeah.
who probably would have never had that.
Yeah.
And then the last person, so you need that person. You also need the person who is more diplomatic. You need the person who can sit down and be able to have a conversation and use the right words and use the right verbiage and be a little bit more sympathetic as well as empathetic. And at times I don't have that one, and I wish I did. But I think we as a whole, as a society, as a community, need to understand the wisdom of Big Mama and Uncle Earl, as well as more than just, can you fix this on my phone? That's not the relegation of the young. It's just to do something with your phone that you don't feel like doing or that you refuse to learn.
That's right.
They have an opinion. They have a thought. They're the foot soldiers. And, when you go to, went to Ethiopia, and one of the things about it is, like, they talk about this history, like, the young folks do the work. And one of the things that I think we have failed to realize is when America was established, the majority of the people were between the ages of 18 and 29. These were not 59, 65. Just because you saw them with white powder wigs on, they were not old. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Ben Franklin, one person with the oldest, and they were in their 30s and 40s. Like, this was not old people doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Because how many 50 and 60-year-olds do you think would have had the audacity to dress up as natives and throw a whole bunch of tea into the harbor and blame it on the natives? That's some young people stuff right there. That is not old people stuff. So we need to not alienate the youth, or just assume that because they're in whatever category bucket we put on them, millennials or Gen Z, all y'all are this. No. Yeah. And use these people so we can actually make a change from all different angles.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great. I love the way you put a bow on that. That was awesome. Well, we've had a lot of, great insight shared in this discussion, and some things that we need to do. We need to, not just talk about it, but obviously not just be hearers, but doers. We've got to put this, put some action to what we're saying, because otherwise we're just going to keep going in circles and keep experiencing the same setbacks. I mean, they're really trying to take us back to Jim Crow. This is like Jim Crow 2.0. Right, and it's we don't need to be going backwards. We need to be going forward, which is what Kamala Harris's campaign was trying to do. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people just voted against her. Yes, a lot of people didn't vote, to your point, but a lot of people who did vote for Trump, I think it was more so against Kamala than it was for Trump. So, okay, so guys, let's just give some final thoughts, and then I'll just do a wrap up. Ruben, I'll start with you. What are some final thoughts you want to leave with our audience?
Well, my final thought is just goes back to the name of the program, putting us back together again. It's time. It's time that we that we look internally and at who we are. We need to learn the lessons of the past, um, and then and not just the tragic things, but also the lessons of how we move forward. there was some boycotting, but boycotting also um, with supporting of one another. Again, the institution that is the African Methodist Episcopal Church now was first called the Free African Society, and it was a before it became the AME Church, it was the Free African Society. And what they did was a mutual aid. They came together, they began to work together and support one another, and they began to buy land, purchase, And so we began to look at some of the lessons of the past, and because this crisis that we are now facing is going to make us start having to look internally, because we're not going to be able to um, rely on a lot of the people that we thought were allies, and we found out this election um, were not there when we needed them, and so it and so we need to understand who our power and who our strength is, where our strength comes from, and it is in an internal. The kingdom of heaven is within, and so we need to work on within our communities, and as we begin to work on us and bring and get us back together again, it has a power that works outside, and it's an inside out game. And so I'm looking forward to the opportunity to be around people who want to build, who people who want to organize in our communities, that will, as we begin to strengthen ourselves, will attract others.
I love it. Well said. I love it. Yes, we've got to put our community and this government back together again. I love it. Thank you for that, Ruben. That was powerful. And
right.
Any final words you want to share with our audience tonight?
My final words. All right, so I'm gonna lean in real quick.
Unfiltered.
I want to. In all honesty, I really want this to be a reset.
Yep.
And a reset for all of us. I mean, I always think that people tend to get stuck in what it is that has either been comfortable or what has been enjoyable. They stick to those two. And comfort does not always mean good.
That's true.
And enjoyment does not always mean great, And we need to start really understanding that we'll have to pay attention to who we are as a whole. That means do the same way that you can watch all the regular videos and scroll through TikTok all day long. You can go watch Roland Martin or Karen Hunter or any of these different sources that has read Daniel Favors. All these people who do media in a way that's not the traditional way. They actually tell you the story and then they give you commentary. Yes. If you don't want to hear that stuff, you don't have to hear the extra commentary, but at least get the news. We need to start back understanding that just because the schools don't want to teach certain stuff does not mean that you're off the hook. The school was not the parent anyway. You are. Understand that our power is more than just complaining online.
That's right.
Our power is actually getting out and doing something about it. Actually going out and saying, hey, I may not even understand how this here works, but I know that her over there and him over there do. And y'all just tell me what y'all want. We can't turn the rappers to do it for us.
That's right.
Don't get me wrong. I like some of the best music. I like some people out there. I like some disrespectful music that we shouldn't be listening to. I like all of that. But I don't want to see a rapper at the front being spoken to. His job is to entertain. Her job is to entertain. We need to understand that we don't need to be listening to what the rapper said. And don't get me wrong. I enjoy Kendrick Lamar and Killer Mike. This is not a knock against him. This is more so the people who the only information they will get is from Drake or somebody like that or whoever else. Yeah. No, I don't care if Sexy Red decided that she was going for something. The moment she opened her mouth and you heard that there was nothing there, you should have been like, oh, poor baby. And then go on to somebody who's an expert in that. We need to stop with this anti-intellectual aspect of what we're doing.
Right.
Oh, I don't want to talk to this person because they maybe are smart and I don't want to have to understand the words. Because that's what's going to save us. An immunologist is going to help, not a person who's a podcaster. And I don't mean that in a negative way. We're on the show right now. But what I'm saying is, I don't want to hear RFK tell somebody about what is or is not. When you have people who went to school their whole lives.
Who have the expertise.
Who has the
Absolutely.
expertise.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't do that for nobody else. But we play armchair quarterback as if we could have went out there and threw that ball. As if we could have shot that shot. As if we could have did any of that stuff. And we could not have. So let's, as a group, and it's going to take time because, again, we always going to fall back into what's enjoyable or what's comfortable. But if we can get out of those two and actually start to put this stuff together and realize that it's now a states' rights issue in America.
Yeah.
So we're in the South. Let's be real. The majority of there are more black people in Texas than anywhere else in the country. There are more black people in Houston than there are in Atlanta. But yet we think of Atlanta as a black city and we do not think of Houston as one. There are more black people in D.C. and around there.
Chocolate City?
Yeah,
What
who
happened
have
to Chocolate
more
City?
income and more money, Prince George's County and all that kind of stuff. But we don't go to
Absolutely.
these people who work on Capitol Hill and work in these places and do these things. So I just want us to reset and rebuild ourselves up to where we can still have fun. If you still want to go get brunch with the grass wall and all that kind of stuff, you can still go do that. But let that end at that date. Or if you still want to, listen to whoever you want to listen to, let that end when you get out the car. Let's read some of these books, understand certain stuff that's going on, and let's reset and really stand on the business instead of just standing on it online and laughing about it.
That's right, because that's not going to change anything.
Not a thing.
Absolutely. Well said. I love it.
I'm sorry for being long.
No, you were fine. No, you were fine. So we're celebrating Black History Month, and I want to give kudos to no other than Kendrick Lamar, for I have to talk about his halftime Super Bowl performance, because it has some subtle and overt messages. It was bold, and I know you touched on this, Ruben. It sent a powerful message to the world about systemic inequality, social and racial injustice, oppression, a celebration of Black culture and its rich heritage, unifying the community and educating the world about our struggles and how we've overcome. And a nice illustration of that was done by Serena Williams' Crip Walk dance. Y'all, this was much more than a beef with Drake. Everyone keeps focused on Drake. No, it was much deeper than that. This was about freedom. Serena couldn't be herself at Wimbledon, but she could be herself at the Super Bowl. So in case you missed it, this was all about unapologetic Blackness. And
No. They not like us. No. They not like us. What? They not like us. No. No. They not like us. Are you my friend? Are we locked in? Then stab this way. Stab that way. Then stab this way. Stab that way. Hold on. I go by the name of K. Kendrick Lamar. Okay, Lamar, Mr. Morale. This is Gen X. We come all the way from Compton, California to a party with y'all. Let me hear you say, Buster. Somebody gotta do it. Let my foot up on the gas, but somebody gotta turn this TV.
absolutely. I loved it. It was all about unapologetic Blackness. I loved it. Because you're right. They are not like us because they have not walked in our footsteps. They have not been through Jim Crow. They have not been discriminated against. They have not been through segregation. So you're right. They're not like us. Absolutely. So I loved it. I had to just show the clip. Thank you, producer, for showing the clip. I loved it. But that is what I want to leave with you all is that, express your freedom, express your voice, and help make a difference in this world to change the world to be a better place, change the world to impact our families, our generations. And, other countries are leaning on the U.S., and we don't want them to have a negative view of who we are. We can't lose our dignity and integrity in the process of standing on our Constitution, on who we're supposed to be as a country. Hold our representatives accountable. Call your representatives. Send them letters. Let's start there. Let's galvanize in our local communities. Let's protest. And I'm ready to join. Whatever NAACPs or whatever organizations are going on in Texas, I'm ready for this movement that we've got to make collectively as a people. So thank you guys for joining us. I want to thank my panelists. You guys were amazing. So I've got to bring you guys back. You guys were so wonderful. Thank you so much for the powerful insights that you shared with us. So I love you guys. Make sure to love yourself. Follow me and like me on social media. And I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much.
Blessing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.